I think it's been mentioned earlier before, and it's relevant to the question I'm about to ask with regards to the European Union. But we are all now aware of these stark images emerging from an attack yesterday in Syria involving nerve agents, by all accounts. It's sad, if that would have happened 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we'd all be outraged by it. It'd be leading every newscast. Now it's accepted almost as a matter of course. It's truly unbelievable. We've reached a point in this world and in our political discourse in this country where people are being gassed with nerve agents from airstrikes. And it's just like another day, or something else has gone on. The outrage level has reached a point of resistance now where it's just truly startling. I know the Secretary of State, a couple of days ago, our Secretary of State commented that the people of Syria would have a role to play in Assad's future. Well, it depends on which ones are still alive. Because if this continues, and it would have been impossible had it not been for Russia's cooperation and support of Assad. And I think our allies in Europe understand this. And I ask you this because this attack happened basically on the same day that the European Union is hosting a conference about who's going to pay for rebuilding Syria. And the message seems to be, meaning Assad, is going to keep gassing and killing people and doing whatever he wants with the help of the Russians, the Iranians, Hezbollah, and others. And then you, the world, including the European Union, are going to pay for it. What is the sentiment of the European Union in light of the fact that as this gathering is occurring, I believe, in Brussels, on the eve of it, or on the same day of this gathering, we receive news about this horrifying atrocity committed by the Assad regime assisted by Vladimir Putin? What has been the sentiment in light of the timing and between this attack happening on the same day or on the eve of this important gathering?
Well, Senator, I can only share your outrage at the horror of the attack, and if it is confirmed, the use of chemical weapons, which we are completely opposed to. I think Syria is one of the greatest humanitarian crises of our lifetime, of our generation. And the neighboring countries have borne the brunt. We have also seen the consequences. The European Union, I think, has worked tirelessly to try to find a ceasefire and a political transition which would enable the people of Syria to determine their own future. This is the sense in which we've worked. We've worked closely with the United States. It has eluded us for the moment, but we will continue to work in that direction. The conference that you mentioned at the initiative of High Representative Mogherini is indeed designed to get us to start thinking about the day after. Assuming that we can get a ceasefire, assuming that we can get a viable process of political transition and allowing the people of Syria to determine the fate of their own country, how do we support that process and encourage them? Because the reconstruction which will be needed in Syria is massive, Senator, as you can imagine, the destruction which has been done. And it will require a massive effort of the international community. So it's not that we're abandoning our issue of wanting to see a ceasefire and wanting to see a political process whereby we can figure out how Syria determines its own future. But if we don't start now thinking about what the reconstruction and how that could be funded and how it could be done, that will also be an incentive to the warring parties, perhaps to also realize the benefit of actually stopping the fighting and trying to find our way forward. So it's in that spirit that we are convening this conference. It is not in any sense to be complacent about the ongoing horror of what is happening in Syria.
And by no means did I mean to imply that they're being complacent. I think it's an important conference as well. I would just say, as a matter of personal view, and I hope it's one that's widely shared, it's hard to imagine the international community getting together and helping rebuild a Syria in which a war criminal, a monster like Bashar al-Assad, this is not the first time he's done this sort of thing, would somehow be running that country. It would be difficult for the people of Syria. Imagine for a moment if you are one of these people who just had your child killed by a nerve agent dropped by the regime, ever accepting that this individual is going to be governing you. And so I know you can't comment on that, but that's my view, and I wanted to share it. And I wanted to share one more thing, and this, I think, goes right to the alliance between the European Union and the United States. It's a quote. The Washington Post ran this about 48 hours ago, and it really is, I think, goes right to the heart of what's happening. This is from Jean Kirkpatrick back in the 80s. She wrote, quote, "To destroy a society, it is first necessary to delegitimize its basic institutions so as to detach the identifications and affections of its citizens from the institutions and authorities of the society marked for destruction. An alliance among democracies is based on shared ideals. The process of delegitimization is therefore an absolutely ideal instrument for undermining an alliance as well as for undermining a government. Isn't that, in fact, what we see occurring via Vladimir Putin? He is attempting to delegitimize the institutions of democracy across our alliance for purposes of destroying that alliance.
Well, I think that we understand that perhaps President Putin sees real democracy as a threat to the situation in Russia. We, as you know, strongly support democratization and the institutions which go with it. I come back to the point I made earlier, Chairman, Senator. I continue to have great faith in the robustness of our democracies on both sides of the Atlantic, and I believe that while there are forces at work which would seek to delegitimize or to put into question the effectiveness of those institutions, I believe that in the end, the commitment of our citizens to the democratic process, to the rule of law, will carry the day. But we understand that there are very distinct threats coming in that direction.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your testimony, for your support, for everything you've done with us here today. Just for the record, I don't want to be unfair. As far as I know, as of 11:40 p.m. a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, I am not aware of either a State Department or a White House statement condemning what has occurred in Syria. And I hope that changes.